Have you ever wondered why peace feels like something you have to chase, even though it's supposed to live inside you? Most people spend their entire lives running chasing money, approval, power, or love, believing that one more achievement, one more compliment, one more person will finally make the noise in their head stop. Yet, the moment they reach it, the silence they crave still doesn't come. The mind only whispers, "You need more." It's strange, isn't it? We live in a time where everything moves faster, yet inside, we're more restless than ever. The world tells you that peace comes from fixing your circumstances. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if peace begins when you stop trying to fix everything outside, and instead, face the storm within? There's an old saying from the Stoics: you suffer not from the things themselves, but from the judgments you make about them. It's a sentence most people scroll past without thinking. But when you really stop and let it sink in, it changes everything. This is the story of a man who learned that truth the hard way. He wasn't a philosopher. Not a saint. Just a man who had grown tired of himself. He had spent years blaming the world for his unhappiness, his boss, his relationships, his failures. Every day he woke up with the same ache in his chest, a quiet anger, a constant feeling that life was unfair. But then one night, something inside him cracked. Not from weakness, from exhaustion. He sat alone in his small apartment, lights off, staring at the ceiling, realizing that he couldn't run anymore. For the first time in his life, he asked himself a question he had always avoided. What if the problem isn't the world? What if the problem is me? That single question marked the beginning of everything. The beginning of a journey not toward wealth, fame, or success, but toward stillness. Toward something deeper than happiness. Toward peace. He didn't know it yet, but that question would lead him to the teachings of the Stoics, to the wisdom of men who lived 2,000 years ago but understood the human heart better than anyone alive today. Their words would tear down everything he thought he knew about control, pain, and meaning, and in doing so, they would rebuild him. This is how he learned the 10 Stoic lessons that ended most of his problems, not by changing his life, but by changing the way he saw life. Have you ever noticed how most of your pain comes from trying to control things you never could? People, outcomes, the past, the future, all slipping through your hands no matter how tightly you hold on. And yet, you keep trying. Because somewhere inside, you still believe that if you just try harder, maybe this time, life will finally listen. But it never does. That's where the first Stoic lesson begins, with a brutal but liberating truth: you can't control life. You can only control yourself. The man learned this one morning when his world seemed to fall apart. He had lost his job, his phone kept buzzing with overdue bills, and the person he loved most had stopped answering his calls. Everything he built his identity on gone in a single week. He sat there, staring at the floor, his mind spinning with why me, and how do I fix this? But no answer came. Only the quiet voice of panic. That night, while scrolling aimlessly through the noise of social media, he stumbled upon a quote from Epictetus: "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." 7 simple words, yet they hit him harder than any speech or sermon ever had. He realized that all his life, he had tried to control what was never his, to command other people's actions, opinions, the outcome of every plan. He had fought reality itself, and lost every time. But what if he stopped fighting? What if, instead of trying to fix the uncontrollable, he focused only on his own choices, his thoughts, his reactions, his discipline, his peace? That idea scared him at first, because surrender always feels like failure. But slowly, he saw the paradox: when you stop trying to control everything, you actually gain control of yourself. The storm outside may rage, but within, there is stillness. He started practicing it in small ways. When traffic made him late, he breathed and accepted it. When someone insulted him, he chose silence instead of reaction. When plans collapsed, he reminded himself, "This is not up to me." And for the first time in his life, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: calm. Not because life got easier, but because he stopped being its prisoner. The reward of mastering this lesson is freedom: freedom from the chaos of others, from the weight of outcomes, from the constant battle with what simply is. So if you've made it this far, here's your reward. By the end of this video, you won't just understand Stoicism, you'll carry with you the keys to inner peace that no one can take away. Stay until the end, because each lesson builds upon the last, and by the 10th, your world will look completely different. But for now, remember this: you are not meant to control everything. You are meant to master yourself. That's where real power begins. Have you ever stopped and wondered why the same thoughts keep repeating in your head like echoes you can't silence? You wake up worrying about what might go wrong, and by night, you find that everything has gone wrong, just like you feared. It's almost as if your thoughts create your reality. But what if that's not just a poetic idea? What if it's the law of your mind, the rule that quietly shapes your entire life? That's what the man discovered next. After learning to let go of what he couldn't control, he noticed something deeper: his mind was still his biggest battlefield. Even when life was calm, his thoughts were loud. Every situation became a storm inside his head. He realized he wasn't suffering from the world, he was suffering from himself. One night, while reading the writings of Marcus Aurelius, he came across a line that stopped him cold. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. He read it again. Then again. Until it sank in: if your thoughts are angry, you live in a world of anger. If your thoughts are anxious, you live in a world of fear. But if your thoughts are calm, strong, and disciplined, then peace becomes your reality, no matter what's happening outside. From that moment, he made a choice, not a dramatic one, but a quiet one, to guard his mind like a fortress. He started observing his thoughts like a sentry watching the gates. Every time a thought of envy or fear crept in, he didn't fight it, he simply saw it for what it was: a visitor. And then, he let it pass. He began replacing his mental noise with better questions. Instead of "why is this happening to me?" he asked, "what is this trying to teach me?" Instead of "what if I fail?" he whispered, "what if this is exactly where I'm meant to grow?" Days turned into weeks, and something strange began to happen. The more he watched his thoughts, the more peaceful he became. The less he reacted, the more he understood. He saw that the mind is like soil: whatever you plant, grows. Plant fear, and you'll harvest chaos. Plant gratitude, and you'll harvest peace. You become what you think about most. That's not a metaphor, it's a mirror. So if you constantly replay pain, betrayal, or failure in your mind, don't be surprised when life keeps showing you the same patterns. But if you choose, every single day, to plant better thoughts, ones rooted in courage, acceptance, and reason, then slowly, almost imperceptibly, life changes shape around you. That's the Stoic secret: peace isn't something you chase. It's something you think into existence. Have you ever asked yourself why pain always feels so personal, as if life singles you out to suffer while everyone else walks freely through happiness? Every heartbreak, every loss, every disappointment feels like proof that the world is unfair. But what if pain isn't punishment? What if pain is the greatest teacher you'll ever have, one that speaks only when you're finally ready to listen? The man had spent years running from pain. Whenever life hurt, he distracted himself: new goals, new relationships, new escapes. But no matter how far he ran, it always found him again, wearing a new face. Until one day, it broke him in a way he couldn't hide from. It happened quietly. Someone he trusted betrayed him. It wasn't dramatic, just cold, silent betrayal. And instead of rage, what he felt most was emptiness. That night, he sat in the dark again, remembering the first lesson: control what you can. But this time, the pain was inside him and it demanded to be felt. He turned to Seneca's words. Fire tests gold, Adversity tests the brave. Something about it clicked. Maybe the pain wasn't there to destroy him, maybe it was there to reveal him. Maybe life wasn't trying to hurt him but to show him where he was still weak, where he still clung to illusions, where he still believed peace was something external. So instead of resisting the pain, he let it in. He sat with it, observed it, watched it burn through every false story he told himself, that people owed him fairness, that love should last forever, that happiness should always feel good. And when those illusions were gone, what remained was something simple, something true. He could endure anything. That's when he finally understood what the Stoics meant when they said, "The obstacle is the way." Every difficulty, every wound, every moment of heartbreak, they weren't interruptions to his peace, they were the path to it. Pain wasn't the enemy. Pain was the mirror that showed him who he really was beneath the noise. And slowly, he stopped asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and began asking, "What is this shaping me into?" That shift changed everything. Pain lost its power to break him because he no longer feared it. And once you no longer fear pain, you become untouchable. So the next time life hurts, remember, it's not cruelty. It's craftsmanship. The universe is shaping you into something stronger than comfort ever could. Have you ever noticed how most of your fear doesn't come from what's happening but from what might happen? You lie awake, replaying scenarios that don't exist. You imagine conversations that never happened. You see disasters that only live in your mind. And before anything even goes wrong, you've already lived through the pain 100 times in your imagination. That's the quiet trap most people never escape. And that's where the man's next lesson began. One morning, he received a message from his manager asking to discuss something important. Instantly, his heart began to race. His mind built 100 possibilities. He's getting fired. He's in trouble. Something bad is coming. The rest of the day, he couldn't focus, couldn't breathe normally, couldn't escape the loop of worry. When the call finally came, the manager simply said, "I wanted to thank you for your consistency lately. Keep it up." That was all. No disaster. No loss. No catastrophe. Just peace, the kind he could have had all along if his imagination hadn't tortured him first. That night, he came across a line from Seneca that felt like it was written directly for him. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. He realized that most of his life's pain wasn't real, it was predicted. Manufactured by the mind. He had been punishing himself for things that hadn't even happened. And that's when he began to notice how his thoughts exaggerated everything. Every silence became rejection. Every delay became failure. Every unknown became danger. So he decided to try something different, something the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Instead of running from fear, he faced it. He asked himself, what's the worst that could actually happen? And every time he did, the monster in his mind grew smaller. He realized that reality is rarely as cruel as imagination. The pain you expect is always worse than the pain you experience. And when you stop fearing what might happen, you begin to actually live what is happening. He began training his mind to pause whenever anxiety took hold. He'd whisper to himself, is this real, or just my imagination? And most of the time, the answer was clear: it was never real. Peace isn't found by controlling life, it's found by quieting the imagination that distorts it. The Stoics understood this centuries ago, yet we still forget. The mind is a liar when it's afraid. So the next time fear whispers its stories, stop and ask, is this happening now, or only in my head? Because once you make that distinction, half your suffering disappears. Have you ever noticed how easily people can ruin your day? A single word, a small insult, a cold look, and suddenly your peace is gone? It feels as if everyone holds power over your emotions, like your mood depends on how kindly the world treats you. But what if that's not true? What if no one can actually hurt you unless you hand them the weapon yourself? The man learned this lesson in the most unexpected way. One afternoon, while waiting in line at a cafe, a stranger cut in front of him. When he politely pointed it out, the man turned around and snapped, "Calm down, it's just coffee." Everyone around them stared. His face flushed with anger and humiliation. He could feel the heat rising inside him, that old, familiar voice screaming, "Don't let him disrespect you." But then, something different happened. Instead of reacting, he remembered a line from Marcus Aurelius. "Choose not to be harmed and you won't be." He took a deep breath and stepped back. He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, didn't seek revenge. He just let it go. And in that quiet moment, he realized something profound. He wasn't angry anymore. He was free. Later that evening, he reflected on what had just happened. The stranger hadn't stolen his peace, he had given it away. Every time he reacted, every time he let someone's words dictate his emotions, he was volunteering to suffer. But if he could choose not to react, if he could choose to remain calm, then no one, no insult, no betrayal, no disrespect could ever reach him again. He started noticing how much of his life was controlled by others' behavior. A rude comment could ruin his day. A silent friend could trigger self-doubt. A small mistake could spiral into shame. But every time he paused, every time he refused to let someone else's actions control his mind, he gained power, real, unshakable power. The Stoics called it emotional sovereignty, the art of owning your inner state. It doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop bleeding for things you can't control. He realized that peace isn't about avoiding conflict, it's about mastering response. The world can say what it wants, people can do what they please, but the final say is always yours. You can choose to be offended, or you can choose to be untouchable. You can choose to fight, or you can choose to stay calm. And that choice, that quiet, invisible moment of self-control is where freedom lives. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember this: they can only touch you if you let them. Your reaction is your power. Guard it carefully. Have you ever looked at something, a photograph, a place, a person, and felt the ache of realizing that nothing lasts forever? The moments you once swore you'd never forget start to fade. The faces you thought would always stay eventually disappear. Even the version of yourself you were a year ago is gone, replaced quietly by someone else. That realization used to terrify the man. He was obsessed with holding on to people, to memories, to comfort. Every time something changed, it felt like loss. Every ending felt like death. But one day, while walking home under a gray winter sky, he noticed the trees around him. Their branches were bare, lifeless. Yet somehow, he knew that within a few months, they would bloom again. It was then he remembered a line from Marcus Aurelius. "All things are ephemeral, even this moment." He stopped walking. For the first time, he didn't fight the sadness that came with change. He let it settle in his chest like a quiet truth: nothing lasts, and that's what makes it beautiful. The Stoics believed that impermanence isn't something to fear, it's something to honor. Because when you truly understand that everything will end, you finally start to live with appreciation instead of attachment. He began applying this lesson to his life. When someone he loved left, he stopped chasing closure. When success came, he stopped clinging to it. When happiness faded, he didn't panic because he knew it would return in time, just as winter always gives way to spring. And strangely, this acceptance didn't make life colder, it made it richer. Every sunrise felt like a gift. Every conversation, a privilege. Every goodbye, a sacred reminder to love more deeply while you can. He started to see how much pain in life comes from resisting what must change. We fight the inevitable and then call it suffering. But when you accept impermanence, when you truly embrace it, you stop being afraid of loss, because you understand that loss is simply life renewing itself. Nothing you have will last forever, not your possessions, not your titles, not even your body. But that truth doesn't diminish meaning, It creates it. Because knowing that everything ends is what makes every second matter. So hold the people you love a little closer. Be present in the moments that seem ordinary. Because one day, those moments will be gone and they'll be the very things you'll wish you could live again. Everything ends. But within that ending lies peace, because impermanence is not a curse. It's the universe's way of reminding you to cherish everything while you have it. Have you ever wondered why life seems to test you the most right when you're trying to move forward? You set a goal, you take a step, and immediately something blocks your path. The car breaks down, someone betrays you, the opportunity vanishes. It almost feels as if the universe itself is working against you. But what if that's not true? What if the obstacles aren't in your way, but are the way? That's the lesson the man learned next, not from comfort, but from collision. He had finally begun rebuilding his life. A new job, a clear routine, a fragile sense of peace. But just as things began to feel stable, everything collapsed again. The company downsized. His position was gone. The very stability he had worked so hard for slipped through his fingers overnight. The old version of him would have panicked, spiraled, drowned in anger. But now, he paused. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he asked, "What if this is happening for me?" He remembered a quote from Marcus Aurelius. "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He repeated those words until they sank deep into him. Every obstacle is a test not of fate, but of perception. You can see it as destruction, or you can see it as direction. He started to treat every difficulty as a messenger. If something blocked him, he asked, "What is this trying to teach me?" When people doubted him, he learned patience. When plans fell apart, he learned resilience. When life said no, he listened closer, because sometimes, that no was simply pointing him toward a better yes. The Stoics believed that the obstacle is the raw material of growth, that pain and progress are twins. You can't have one without the other. And once he stopped resisting hardship, something shifted. Instead of falling apart under pressure, he began to rise because of it. He realized that every successful person he admired had one thing in common: not luck, not privilege, but the ability to turn pain into progress. To take what should have broken them and use it to build something greater. And he understood now. The obstacle was never his enemy. It was his path. His teacher. His test. So the next time something goes wrong, when doors close, when plans collapse, when life takes away what you thought you needed, don't curse it. Look at it carefully. That obstacle might be the exact thing shaping you into the person you were meant to become. The mountain doesn't block your path. The mountain is your path. Have you ever noticed how quickly joy disappears the moment you start comparing yourself to someone else? 1 second, you're content, proud even, and the next, you see someone doing better, earning more, looking happier, and suddenly everything you have feels small. You were at peace a moment ago, but now, you're restless. Why? Because you've handed your happiness over to someone else's highlight reel. That's the quiet poison the man had lived with for years. Even as he practiced the Stoic lessons, calm, patience, acceptance, this one still lingered inside him. He thought he was content until he scrolled through the lives of others, friends traveling, colleagues succeeding, strangers flaunting lives that seemed effortless. And suddenly, his own progress looked meaningless. He tried to shake it off, but envy is a clever parasite. It doesn't announce itself, it whispers. It tells you you're behind, that you're not enough, that you failed because someone else has more. One evening, while reading from Epictetus, he found a passage that pierced through that illusion. Another man's progress is none of your concern. Your only task is to be better than your former self. He read that line again and felt something heavy lift from his chest. Because it wasn't success that had been stealing his peace, it was comparison. He began to realize that peace doesn't live in the gap between you and others, it lives in the space between who you were yesterday and who you are today. The only real competition is with the person you were before. So he changed his focus. Instead of measuring his life by other people's milestones, he measured it by his own consistency. Did he stay calm in situations that once made him explode? Did he show gratitude where he once complained? Did he move forward, even one small step? And for the first time, progress felt peaceful. Because it wasn't about proving anything, it was about becoming someone better. The Stoics believed that envy blinds the soul. It makes you look outward when the real battle is inward. And once he understood that, he stopped chasing others' paths and started mastering his own. He saw how strange it was, everyone running toward happiness while secretly looking sideways to make sure they're ahead of someone else. But peace doesn't live in competition. It lives in contentment. When you stop comparing, you start appreciating. You begin to see that your life was never meant to look like anyone else's, it was meant to teach you something no one else could learn in your place. So when you feel the urge to compare, pause and remind yourself, the only person you need to surpass is the one you were yesterday. Because the moment you understand that, you win back your peace. Have you ever asked yourself how much is enough? How much money, how much attention, how much success will finally make you feel whole? We live in a world that screams more possessions, more recognition, more everything. Yet, strangely, the more we gather, the emptier we feel. It's like drinking salt water, the more you consume, the thirstier you become. That realization struck the man one morning when he opened his closet. It was full rows of clothes, shoes, gadgets, yet he stood there thinking, I have nothing to wear. Later that day, while scrolling through online stores, he caught his reflection on the screen, tired, distracted, wanting things he didn't need. And in that reflection, he saw the truth. He wasn't chasing stuff. He was chasing meaning. That night, he read these words from Seneca. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. He realized that his problem wasn't lack, it was excess. Too many possessions, too many distractions, too many desires pulling him away from peace. So, he began to let go one thing, one habit, one attachment at a time. He sold half his belongings, deleted the social media apps that fed his comparison, stopped trying to impress people who weren't watching anyway. At first, it felt uncomfortable, even lonely. But then, slowly, a new kind of space opened up, not just in his room, but in his mind. Without the noise of more, he could finally hear himself think. He noticed the small joys again, the sound of rain, the warmth of tea, the quiet satisfaction of simplicity. And he began to understand why the Stoics prized minimalism, not because it was trendy, but because it was freedom. The more you own, the more those things own you. The more you chase, the more you forget what you already have. True peace isn't found in addition, it's found in subtraction. He realized that inner peace wasn't about adding more comfort, it was about removing what disturbs it. Less clutter. Less noise. Less pretending. And with each thing he released, life became lighter. His days became slower, his thoughts calmer. He no longer woke up chasing something invisible. Instead, he woke up grateful for what already was. You don't need a bigger life. You need a quieter one. Because happiness doesn't come when everything is added, it comes when nothing is missing. So stop asking, what do I still need, and start asking, what can I live without? The answer to that question might be the first step toward the peace you've been searching for all along. Have you ever truly faced the reality that one day, you'll take your final breath and the world will simply go on without you? It's a thought most people run from. We distract ourselves, plan endlessly, chase comfort, and cling to youth, as if we could bargain with time. But no matter how fast you run, death waits patient, silent, certain. For most of his life, the man feared death. The very idea of it made him restless. He avoided thinking about it, convinced that ignoring it would somehow keep it away. But then, one evening, as he sat alone on his balcony watching the sun sink below the horizon, he realized something that shook him. Every sunset he'd ever watched had died, and yet, the beauty of it never faded. He opened his worn copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations and read, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He closed the book and let the words echo inside him. For the first time, he didn't feel fear. He felt clarity. Because if life can end at any moment, then every moment matters infinitely more. The Stoics called this reflection memento mori, remember you will die. But it isn't meant to depress you. It's meant to wake you up. To remind you that the clock is always ticking, and the time to live fully is not someday. It's now. He began to see how much time he had wasted holding grudges, chasing validation, overthinking things that didn't matter. He realized that every argument, every worry, every delay in gratitude was a theft stolen not by death, but by his own neglect of life. So he started living differently. He forgave faster. He spoke kinder. He told people he loved them without waiting for the right time. He stopped postponing the things that stirred his soul. Because he understood that no one is promised tomorrow, and that truth isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to set you free. The awareness of death doesn't darken life, it sharpens it. It cuts through triviality and reveals what's real. It shows you that peace isn't found in endless time, it's found in presence. And as he looked up at the night sky that evening, feeling the weight of his own impermanence, he smiled. Not with fear, but with gratitude, because knowing that life would end finally made him want to live it. That was the final lesson. The one that tied them all together. Control what you can. Master your thoughts. Accept pain. Let go of fear. Guard your peace. Embrace change. See obstacles as teachers. Stop comparing. Desire less. And remember, none of this lasts forever. Life gets peaceful the moment you stop pretending it's permanent.